welcome to Learn Coding Tutorials. In this video, we are going to learn about AJAX and RESTful APIs. Specifically, here's the definition for AJAX that Google has pulled, but more importantly, this is what we really care about. AJAX is a developer's dream because you can update a web page without reloading the page. So that's what really makes modern web development really cool, is that we can respond to new data without actually reloading the page, and then we can do specifically what we want instead of reloading the entire page. RESTful API, this is what Google pulls. It says that API is an application program interface, that's what API stands for, that uses HTTP requests to get, put, post, and delete data. You'll see that I have those four things here: post, get, put, and delete. And I also have another acronym called CRUD, which we often use. And CRUD stands for create, which is the same thing as post, or that uses post commands; read, which uses get commands; update, which uses put commands; and then delete, which uses delete commands. So here's specifically what we are going to be building. I'm just going to show you these four operations here in this little app that we're going to build ourselves, including the server using Node. So you see here there's a button called read/get products, and if we click that, we get these from the server, and so these are populated from our server. We can then create or post. So let's say we want to buy some food. So this is the create or the post command. And then we can update or put. So let's change this to computer here. And you'll notice it doesn't do anything because it looks like that. But if we refresh the page and then we read and get our products, you'll see that this is computer now. So we've updated this ID1 to be computer instead of laptop. And then we can also delete. And so those are the four commands that we are going to cover in this video. So let's get started now. Before we begin, we're going to need two different things here. You want to download Node.js for whatever operating system that you're using. I would just go with the 4.3.2 here because that's the long-term support version. And then download Sublime Text, which is the text editor that we'll be using. And then also there's a GitHub repository that you can go to get the code from. It's right here, and there will be a link in the description below. So let's get started. And first thing we want to do is go here. We're going to create a folder that we're going to put our code in. Let's just call it Ajax API tutorial. And you can just click to create these folders if you want. I'm just using the terminal here, so you can manually create these. And then we're going to open this in our Sublime Text here. So I'm just going to drag this here. You'll see that that shows up there. Get rid of this. And we're going to use jQuery for our Ajax. And so let's create a file called jQuery. We're just going to pull in the code from online instead of using the online version, so we can do this locally. So just type in something like jQuery CDN, and then we can take the minified code there, just copy all of this, throw that in here, save it, and that is the jQuery that we're going to use. And so now let's set up our server. We're not going to build our HTML yet. And after you download Node, you should have npm and Node installed. You can check that with -v there. We're going to install two dependencies here, and specifically, let's first do this. That way we get our package.json. -s will basically say yes to everything, and just kind of, so you don't need to go through all the options. We're going to install npm install i-save. We're going to install express and body parser, which is going to be used to read things that we send to our server. And you'll notice that they get added here. And so the first thing we want to do is let's set up our Node server. So let's create a file called server.js. And inside of this folder, let's just set up a basic Express server. And if you don't really understand how Express works, don't really worry about it. We're really focusing on Ajax here instead of building a server. So just kind of copy what I have here, and I'll try to explain as much as I can. So for our Express, we're going to pull in the Express dependency. App is going to equal to running Express, so app is going to be our primary variable in here. And so let's do app.use express.static. This is where our static files are going to be, and let's just make it in the dir name, so just in our root folder. And we're just going to say app.listen, and let's create a port variable up here. Var port is equal to process.env. We're not going to use this process.env.port, but this is just good practice in general. And let me just turn something off really quickly. All right. And then we're just going to listen on the port, and then we're going to have a callback function after it's listening. Let's just log server listening on, and then we'll put in the port here. So if we were to run our server now, we would see node server that, but we don't have anything showing up there. So if we go to our localhost 3000 here, nothing will show there because we haven't done anything. Let's create our index.html so that we have something to actually display on the page. So index.html. And whenever we update our server, we need to restart this right here. If we don't restart our server and we just update our index.html or our client-side code, we don't need to restart our server. So let's just write our basic index.html and let's just call this Ajax tutorial, Ajax API tutorial or whatever. And then in our body, let's just display an H1 Ajax API tutorial. And then if we were to refresh our page here, you'll see that that shows up there. And then let's pull in our jQuery dependency. So right now we're just doing basic setup jQuery.js so that we can use jQuery. And then we're going to create another file called scripts.js where our JavaScript and Ajax code is going to live. And we need to create that folder or file here, scripts.js. And we will not do anything there yet. And just down here, let's create some basic, let's just kind of create the foundation of our app here. So this is just going to be boilerplate, or not boilerplate, but just setup for what we're actually going to be doing Ajax and RESTful request with. So we remember we had this read/get products button at the top. And then we had a form where we could create a new product and just copy paste what I have here, or just copy what I have here. We're just building our foundation to get us started. Create input, and then a button for create/post. And then down here, this is going to be where our, let's make an HR here. This is going to be where our actual table is. And then we're going to have a T head, and then a TR. And then TH, first one's going to be ID, TH, second one's going to be name, and then third one is going to be actions. And if we refresh our browser, we'll see that this information is now in the browser. And so now let's go to our scripts.js where we are going to begin writing some JavaScript code. So first thing we're going to do is let's just do a JavaScript ready function to make sure that everything is loaded before we run our code. And then let's first go to our server actually before we fill this in. And let's just kind of populate let's just create our basic, pre-populate 2 different products just so we have some seed data to use here. So we're just going to do var products equals, and we'll just start with 2 products. It's going to be an array. And then let's first we'll have an ID of 1, and a name of laptop. You can put whatever you want in here. You can create whatever products you want. ID 2, name microwave. And for our IDs, we're going to use a counter. So our current ID is 2, so that when we create new IDs, it'll start with, so we'll be able to count up and go to 3 instead of using 2 here. And then, all right, so let's create our first Ajax request, or our first RESTful API thing. So we'll go to our scripts here. What we're going to do is the command to do that is going to be $.ajax is going to be how we do Ajax requests with jQuery. So let's first actually put a comment here. So we'll say get/read. This is going to be our get/read command. And we want to do that when we click on read/get product. So let's create a click handler for that first. So when we click on the get button, remember that's an ID, so we're using the pound there. On click, we are going to do the Ajax request. But first, let's just make sure that it's working right. Refresh test. And since we actually edited our server, we need to refresh or restart this. So I'm going to do Control-C here and then just run it again. And then I'm going to refresh our browser here. Open up the console. Mine's Command-Alt-J, or you can just go here, more tools, developer tools here. And then if I click on read/get products, you'll see that the test shows up. So this is getting hooked up correctly. And then now when we click that button, we want to do an Ajax request. So $.Ajax. And then it's going to take some options here. It's going to be a URL. We're going to say that we're going to hit the products URL. And we haven't created this in our server yet. We're going to do that soon. Content type is going to be application/JSON. And then the success. So when the request is successful, we are going to, for now, let's just console log the response just to make sure that we hook it up correctly. And in our server here, let's create that route for us to use. We're going to do app.get products. Remember, that's the route that we're defining here. And then request response. And then let's just respond res.send. And then it'll just be success. And then let's restart our server. And then let's try that again. And then read/get, you'll see that the success is logged there. So we are hitting our endpoint correctly. And instead of doing this now, we're just going to respond.send. We're going to send up the products that we have up here in our local, we'll call this our database, which is a really, it's not really a database, it's just an object, but we'll call that our database. And so now if we refresh our server and then refresh the page here and click here, you'll see that we are logging the arrays. Or the array there. So we have officially sent up our data from our server to our client, which is pretty cool. And now in here, what we're going to do is we want to append these two products to our table here. And the way that we can do that is we're going to first cache our selector. So our selector is just going to be the tbody EL there. It's going to be this thing right here. Oh, we forgot to put that in here. tbody. And usually we want to include a specific selector because this is pretty generic, but we have nothing else on this page. So we're just going to use that there. And the selector is going to be tbody. And we're caching it because it's expensive to define a jQuery selector, so we don't want to do that multiple times. And the first thing we want to do is we want to empty the HTML just in case there's anything in it for future operations. And then we're going to say, for each of the items in here, we're going to iterate through them, and then we're going to append them to this table here. And here's how we're going to do this. So response dot, you'll notice that the products is the response dot products because products is a key inside of this object. So response dot products dot for each function product. And I know I'm going pretty quickly, so if you need to pause and think through what we're doing, just go ahead and pause it. I just want to try not to waste our time with just rambling on and keep this going pretty quickly. We're gonna inside of that selector, we're gonna append some HTML, and we're gonna use multi-lines just to make it look a little bit cleaner. And with multi-lines, we need backslashes at the end of these lines there. So we're gonna first append tr, so another table row, tr backslash, and we'll say td. We'll call this, the class is going to equal the ID. And then in here, we're going to put the product ID. So this is going to be some string concatenation here. It looks pretty ugly, but this is how we do that. So here we have, a string here, and then we're adding in the product ID, and then we have another string finishing off there. So that's how we do that. And then let's put in the, we're just gonna start off with an input in here just so we can make the put request a little bit easier so we don't need to do some additional manipulation. So, so just do what I have here. We're gonna just automatically put in an input here. Usually we wouldn't do this for an actual app, but we're just trying to make things as easy as possible for us here. The value is going to be, again, we're gonna do some string concatenation to put in the product.name, and then last thing, we're going to have our actions buttons here. So, and then actions buttons are going to be, let's do this. So yeah, this is taking a little while, but it's kind of nasty putting HTML in our JavaScript code, but sometimes It's especially nasty with jQuery update button, and we'll say this is going to be update/put. With other frameworks, it's a little bit less ugly to do this, but that's why I don't really like to use jQuery too much. But it's the easiest way to do this sort of thing. All right, so since we didn't update our server, we can just refresh our page here and then click read/get products. You'll see that they've been appended here, and something's wrong with our value needs an equal sign here. I keep on doing that in my tutorials. Refresh, read/get products, and you'll see that they've been appended here. So we've officially done our read/get command in our CRUD operations here. So we've done this right here, or read/get right there. Let's just keep on going. Next thing we want to do is when we click on this create/post, not port, what am I doing? We want to be able to create or add another to-do to this array here. And so what we can do is let's create another click handler for that. And so we're already on our second command here. Let's say create/post. And what we're going to do here is we're going to say create form. And we're doing the submit for the form so that we can press enter as well as click on the create/post button. Let me refresh this just so it says post there. We're going to run our function, event. And since we're allowing us to press enter, we want to prevent the page from doing a hard refresh. So we're going to say prevent default here. And that'll prevent the page from refreshing when we submit the form. And then we're just going to do, we're going to grab the value from the create input. So we'll just say var create input is equal to create input. And then we're going to say, we're going to get the value inside of our Ajax request here. So here we want to do our Ajax request now. And this time it's going to be a post request. And we're going to define that using the method property. So we're going to do URL is going to be same thing, products. And the method, we're going to define a specific method this time. The default is get, which is why we didn't use get up there. We could have done, we could have put get in here, but that's the default, so we don't need that. And then we're going to do, once again, content type is going to be application.json, application/json. And then we're going to have another success here. Actually, we're going to have data here as well because we want to send down the name of the new to-do. And when we send down data, we need to JSON stringify it so that the server can handle it correctly. And we're just going to say we're going to send down, we're going to namespace it with the name so that we know what we're sending down. And then the name is going to be the create input. So that's the selector that we have up there, .val. So that's going to be what's inside of the input box. And the success, we're just going to say function, response. And for now, let's just console log the response. Actually, and then after that, we want to actually empty the input after we send it. So let's just do that right now. And then just to make sure that it shows up on the screen, remember we have this click handler here. We can just kind of do something really cheap here and just do, after we finish, we're just going to force a click on the get button so that we can refresh our to-do list in the on the page. And again, we haven't updated our browser, so we don't need to restart our browser here. So if I refresh here, press read/get products. Oh, actually, we haven't done our server code yet. So we need to set up our route for the app.post. So let's do that right now by going here. And then let's do app.post. And then we're going to define our route here. Products, same thing. Function, request, respond. And then we are going to respond.send, or actually we're going to, so for our post, we actually need to grab the information that we're sending down here. So we need to be able to grab this data here. And to do that, we need to use body parser in our server here. So here's how we set up body parser, equals require body parser. And down here, we're just going to add another thing here called app.use body parser.json, and that's going to allow us to read data inside of our request. So to grab the product name, we're just going to say var name, let's just say product name, equals request.body.name. So this .name comes from this name property that we have here. If we were just to send down the data directly, we wouldn't need the dot, it'll just be the body. And then we're going to say current ID. We're going to increment it by 1. And then we're going to push into the products our new to do. So ID is going to be current ID, which has been incremented. And name is going to be equal to the product name that we sent down. And then we're going to respond .send. We're just going to send a message because we're refreshing the page on our client side. Created product. And since we updated our server, we need to restart this. And let's refresh our browser here and see if it works. Restart get products. Let's try to create food. Press enter. You'll see that we have it logged down here, as well as a new item here with the incremented ID. So we can keep on creating if we want. We can say table, chair. So we have officially done 2 out of our 4 Ajax requests, and it wasn't very hard at all. So this is pretty straightforward. Let me get rid of this space here just to be consistent. Let's move on to our update/put now. So let's say update/put. And this time we're actually going to use a different format for our click handlers, because since these items here are getting blown away and refreshed every time we refresh the page, every time we click this, they're basically new elements on the page. We can't use this because these only work for existing elements on the page. There's another format that we can use to grab items that show up later on the page, which I kind of explained in my jQuery tutorial. So just kind of follow along here. I'm not really going to explain this. Every time we click on the update button, or I'm going to explain it a little bit. So now every time we click on any update button inside of the table, which is always on the page, we're going to now do this. This is just a different syntax for click handlers, and we need this for elements that don't show up originally on the page. We're going to create 3 variables here, just to be clear. First, we're going to grab the row element using jQuery, or get the jQuery row element. And remember, from my jQuery tutorial, we can use this to access the HTML element that we're clicking on. We're turning that into a selector, and we're going to get the closest tr or table row. So that's our row element. And then we're going to say the ID is going to be equal to row L.find. So we're going to be finding the ID class in there and grabbing the text. And that's basically from this right here. So we're grabbing the ID and then grabbing the text inside, which is that. And then we are going to grab the product name. We'll say new name. So this is going to be the updated name. Find class name dot val. So we're grabbing the input in here. So whatever we change this new input to, that's what this jQuery selector is going to grab. And so now what we're going to do is we want to send an Ajax request. And we're going to say the URL is going to be products. And this time we're going to add a /+ ID here. So we're going to append ID to the end of our route there, which we're going to use in our server. And then method, this time is going to be put. And then content type is going to be application.json again. And then data is going to be json.stringify. And this time we're just gonna, let's call it new name just to be super clear what we're setting down. And then in our success, we are going to do something very similar. We're just gonna console log the response, and then we are going to trigger the get button click, which won't actually do anything because, as you can see, if we update one of these to that and we click this, it's gonna be already updated on the page. But we can actually test it by refreshing our browser and then clicking get again. So we'll do that. Let's put a semicolon here. And then now let's set up our server code. So let's go down here. We're going to say app.put and products. And the way that we access that ID is we have a :ID here. And then I'll show you how we get that in a little bit. So to grab the ID, we're going to use a code called var ID is going to be equal to request.params. So these are parameters here, .id. So that's going to grab the ID that we're sending down. And then we're going to cache this so that we don't need to search through extra items. So we're going to be iterating over the products array here, but we just want to stop once we find the correct ID instead of iterating over all of them. So that's not really necessary, but makes things a little bit more performant. And we're not doing any validation for things with the same name. Well, actually, nothing's going to have the same ID. So that's what we're just checking for. If not found, and so that's just to make sure we don't double check once we already find something. And the product ID is equal to the ID that we grabbed from the URL up here. Then we are going to update that product.name is going to be equal to, and let's actually create a variable up here called new name. New name is equal to request.body.newName, because we're sending that down as well. That's going to be equal to new name. We could have just put that down here, but we just want to be clear in our naming here. And then after we do that, let's respond.send. Let's put a space here as well. Respond.send, successfully updated product. And we don't really need to send any data because we're doing the refresh on the client side. So let's restart our server, refresh our page, get our products, and then let's try to update this to an oven. You'll notice that it obviously doesn't change here. And the problem here is that this ID is actually a string, whereas this product.id is a number that we have inside of our array here. So we actually need to turn this string into a number. So we're going to do that. And since we are updating our server, we need to restart our server here. So Control C and that. Let's refresh our page, re/get, and then let's change this to oven right here. Update/put. It's undefined now. And that is because I spelled application here wrong. So let's refresh our browser again, and hopefully it'll work this time. Get, change this to, we need to restart the server because things have updated. And so let's get again, and then let's change this to oven. And it will not change at all, but if we refresh our page and then get it again, you'll notice that it has been properly updated to oven. We can do that with something else. Let's say table. Oops. And then let's change this to chair. Refresh our browser. Nothing's there. You'll see that it's correctly updated there. So that is how we do update/put. And lastly, we are going to do our delete request, and there's no alternate name, it's just delete. And so again, we're just going to do table on same format for click handling, because this delete button shows up later on the page. It's going to be delete button function, and then we're going to again create variables for these row el. Let's just copy paste these actually, and then let's do Ajax, and it's going to be very similar to before. We're going to have the ID in our URL again, so /products/plus ID, and then the method is going to be delete this time, and then content type. Make sure that I spelled this right. Actually, let me just copy paste this just in case. And then we are going to have our success. There's going to be no data sent down. All we need is the ID, because then we can just delete the ID in the array, and just find the ID and then delete that. And then let's console log response, and then let's again do the click to refresh get button dot click. So jQuery makes Ajax pretty simple and fun to do. And then in our server, let's create our delete thing here, app.delete products. Can't spell. Products/ID function request response, and then in here we are going to put in here we're gonna define our ID here. So if our ID is going to equal to request.params.id, and then we are going to again just cache this equals false, and then we're going to say products.forEach. This is really more important, the found. If we have like a million products and then we find it in the first one, we don't want to iterate through the rest of them. I can't talk while I type. We're going to have the index here because we're going to use that for the splice method that we're going to use to kind of delete the item from the array. So we're going to say if it hasn't been found yet, and the product.id is equal to, again, we need this number here, number ID, then we are going to do products.splice at this index, and we're going to say remove one item. If you don't know how splice works, I would look it up. It's a really useful method to note. And then we're going to say respond.send successfully deleted product. And so now let's refresh our server and then refresh this, re/get. Let's try to delete. And now all 4 of our things work. We can re/get products, or let me refresh. So we can re/get products now. We can create/post. So let's say table. We can update/put by changing this to oven. And then we can refresh it to make sure that it is indeed updated. And finally, we can delete now. So those are all 4 of our CRUD operations here. And we did those pretty quickly and easily. Hopefully you learned something from this video, and stay tuned for the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye.